Square rectangle, there it is. Good afternoon again. It's Tuesday, still Tuesday, April 29th, 2025, in House Transportation, and we are continuing our work on S-123 Miscellaneous Department of Motor Vehicles Bill. And we are, I think, this section. Angela, thank you for joining us. We are, I think, really geared in on I think there's two parts to Section 8. We heard a little bit about one part of it earlier, but then now we're going to hear about the other part. So thank you very much for joining us. And as we went out to try to find comments on different sections, some people pointed us in your direction. So I'm hoping you can maybe back and throw us a little info and we'll go from there. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Thank you for having me. For the record, I'm Angela Smith-Jang. I'm the Deputy Commissioner at the Department of Disabilities, Aging, and Independent Living. It's great to be with you here today. Thank you for inviting me to speak about S-123. So Section 8 of S-123 proposes to decrease the fees for an operator's license for Vermonters who receive Supplemental Security Income, SSI, or Social Security Disability Income, SSDI. So a 4-year fee would decrease from the current $62 to $20, which is what is proposed. So that's a decrease of $42 in that fee. And a replacement fee would decrease by $14 from $24 currently to $10 as proposed. So from Dale's perspective, this is a really valuable savings of out-of-pocket income for older Vermonters and people with disabilities on SSI or SSDI. Because this change supports increased choice and independence for these populations. With lower fees, they're able to access a license more easily, which supports, as I said, choice, independence, self-determination, social connection, health, employment. And it's especially important in rural Vermont, where access to other options like public transportation, in most areas, it's limited. We know that from so many things. And it also supports affordability. By saving money on these types of license fees, people are better able to meet their basic needs and use their limited income on essentials like healthcare, housing, food, or fuel. The high costs of basic needs have been called out in both the State Plan on Aging needs assessment and the state health assessment conducted by the Department of Health. This change aligns with the Dale mission to make Vermont the best place to grow old or live with a disability with dignity, respect, and independence. And it also aligns with Age Strong Vermont, which is our first multi-sector plan on aging, which calls for building an age-friendly state, including having more transportation options and transportation access for older Vermonters. I did put together some data from the State Plan on Aging Needs Assessment that I also thought might be helpful for the committee as you're thinking about reducing fees like this. In the latest needs assessment survey for the State Plan on Aging, 68% of respondents said that they drive their own vehicle. 30% said they do not have access to affordable transportation. So almost a third of the people who responded. 33% said they have just enough income to pay expenses. 12% said they do not have enough income to pay expenses and they have to choose what to pay. Similarly, for the Age Strong Vermont multi-sector plan, we conducted listening sessions across the state. And older Vermonters shared a lot about transportation in those listening sessions. They said a car provides them with convenience, accessibility, and freedom. They can socialize, they can get their own groceries, they can take care of their pets. The downside, they said, is that car-related costs are expensive. They also shared their worries about financial security, and they described costs for everything going up. their healthcare, food, fuel, housing, taxes. So S-123 provides an important acknowledgement that operator fees can be a barrier to transportation access for older Vermonters and Vermonters with disabilities, especially those on limited incomes like SSI or SSDI. By providing these discounted fees, one barrier is reduced, and every barrier reduced really matters. The savings and increased access to operators' licenses can make a real difference, both financially and for quality of life for Vermonters. I'm happy to take any questions that people might have.
Thank you very much for joining us, Representative Bauer.
Yeah, thanks for this, and I don't doubt that a program like this, particularly for certain people who, got to come up with that money to get their license, they're going to pay less and have a little more in their pocket. I just wonder if, I think the cost is estimated to be, is it 300?
I believe
Say 300,000 per year, if whether rather than working through the DMV, if that money was used to sort of leverage some other program or provide other services or more support, whether it might be more efficient than this approach. Just kind of put that out there. And did the idea for this come from your group?
From the department, no, this idea did not come from Dale. I will say, just, as I shared, most older Vermonters want to continue to be able to drive as long as they can. Because we live in a rural state with limited access to public transportation, when you lose access to driving, you lose self-determination in many ways. And so being able to reduce barriers to being able to continue to drive, even when you have a limited income, is an important way to continue to support self-determination, choice, and independence for older adults and people with disabilities, of course.
Do you know if this has been asked for before? Do you know if you were involved in any request or you're aware of or asked to testify on it before? One of the things that we've got is a little bit of a turnover in leadership in the department and the bill origins. And we have a new chair, a new vice chair, a new ranking member, and a new committee assistant, and a new ledge counsel, and a second-year JFO. So getting exactly where this might have come from and whether this has been asked for before is something we haven't found an answer to quite yet exactly. Not that that's critical, but I was wondering if you had heard of it, been asked before, or if it had come across your desk at all before.
It has not come across my desk before, and I've been working in Dale for about 8 years, and have been involved in conversations around transportation for older adults for a number of those. And I don't recall it coming up within our conversations here. That doesn't mean it hasn't come up, but it hasn't come across my desk.
So we don't, we don't know how exactly where it came from, but we do know they're paying full price now is what we did here, right? They're paying the full piece today, and your members or people that you represent, they then been working for. Haven't asked for it before, but it sure makes sense in your direction of what you're looking at. But that hasn't been asked for before, and it wasn't part of what you were lobbying for. But had you heard of it before we brought it to your attention when our committee assistant reached out?
No, I hadn't heard about it before. But when I think about the target population for this fee reduction, people on SSI have extremely limited incomes. For one person, it's less than $1,000 a month that they're living on. And every out-of-pocket expense is significant. So a fee reduction of any kind, it is really can be very helpful for people. Certainly what's proposed in this bill would be helpful.
Okay. Thank you, Representative White.
Yeah, Angela, thank you for this information. And I'm just, could you just educate me or us on like exactly someone who's receiving supplemental security income or social security disability income, who are, you know, how old are they? How much income are they making? Just give me a sense of who these Vermonters are.
Yeah, so SSI is designed for, it could be for primarily older adults or people with disabilities who have little to no income. There's no requirement that they have worked, although they may have. Whereas SSDI is specifically for people who have a disabling, have been working and then have a disabling condition that then prevents them from working long term. So it provides that income. So primarily the Vermonters that we're talking about are over 65 or with permanent disabilities. And I don't have the exact numbers in front of me in terms of how much they receive. SSI is, as I said, a pretty small amount. SSDI depends, my understanding is that it depends on how much people have worked previously.
Thank you.
Representative Keiser and Representative Casey.
Thank you very much. When we talk about SSI and SSDI, we're talking about people who are blind and disabled.
They could be blind, they could be disabled, or they could be over the age of 65.
Okay, and you have a sense of how many of those people drive? Probably not, huh?
I don't have numbers around that. There are certainly many people with disabilities and many older adults over 65 who are driving.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
But I don't have numbers around how many are driving versus on SSI or SSDI compared to those who are not.
And I just as a comment, I do see in 2022 that about of the 14,000, 1,140 were under 18. So we suppose those people aren't driving either, or could be. There'd be a mixed population. Okay. Thank you.
Representative Casey.
Is SSI and SSDI taxed?
I don't know the answer to that question. That's a little out of my area of expertise.
Federal.
If it is, it's another area for you to go lobby. You know what I mean? I don't know if they pay tax or not. I know Social Security they pay tax on. I would, we're here in shortfalls, and we need money in the transportation department. I mean, 300,000 here and 300,000 there, it kind of adds up. I got a soft spot for that group. You know what I'm saying? But we're getting a lot of ass. I know that. So that's all I got to say. I just was kind of curious if there's tax on that. Did you see anything? It's not taxed? Okay, good.
I think
All right.
SSDI is.
I should have you identify yourself over there, if you would, please.
Silvernagle, I'm the principal assistant at the Department of Disabilities, Aging and Independent Living. I generally don't testify, but I do believe this is the first time in my couple of years plus that I've been with Dale the department has been in this committee, so.
So.
We appreciate that.
Doesn't, there's the his tax and the other one doesn't. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Representative Township.
Yeah, I would just say, you know, your income tax based on income, if the average SSDI payment per month is $2,800, you're not gonna get into having to pay income tax. You'll be below the minimum, and you can only earn $1,600 on the side if you were, because you're disabled. And I would guess they're not paying income tax because it's such a low amount that they have. And that's true for anybody, including Social Security. If your Social Security is a small payment and that's all you have, you're not paying any income tax.
Clean know that. Interesting.
It's income based. So you can see that in the charts. Yeah, I'm just gonna sort of say the same thing. I think any way we can assist folks, particularly aged, continue to drive when they can safely, right? And it's gonna help socially, it's gonna help them, and then all the way around. But it just seems like if you have a vehicle, $40 isn't gonna, every 2 years is not gonna make much difference. And I just wonder if those funds were put into something else, social programs, bone builders programs, these sort of things, whether they would actually compound a little more than this. Again, I'm not against it. I'm just wondering if it's the most efficient way to spend $300,000, which for transportation, we can increase that 5 times by using it to leverage federal money. So.
I think that one of the things I would want to, are we all set? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
As a committee, I haven't been here a long time, so it's the first time that I've heard this, and I think there's some pretty interesting, there's some significant interest in the committee in terms of the transportation dollars. I also know that the next phase of the DMV Modernization Act is rolling in November. And what I hear right now is a lot of these things are manual, but come next year, how people are qualified and how they process and the handling of things are going to be substantially easier as well, or more active. So I really appreciate, and I'm not looking to wrap up the conversation. I'm saying I haven't seen it since we've been here. I was interested in it. We weren't even sure where to go to look for testimony. So Angela, we very much appreciate you guys coming in, and we really wanted to sort of explore it and wondering where it might fit in our plans of transportation revenue and helping the most vulnerable Vermonters. So again, we weren't exactly the origin of it, and how it came to be is still a little bit unknown with the amount of turnover. And so we were sort of digging into it. That's really where it's at, and then trying to figure out how's it best work in plans. So that's the conversations that we've been having. We haven't been anywhere. We didn't even know where to reach out to hear about it when we started. So I really appreciate you coming in. I'm sorry, I missed a piece there. I'm happy to have you add. This is there's only 4 people watching and 2 of them are on the screen. So don't worry.
Thank you. I was just gonna, did you have somebody come in and talk to Ellie yet?
No, not yet. We did not. So he was involved in this, you believe?
Well, he's a chair of the transportation committee.
I know that, but I meant.
Yeah, of course you do. I didn't mean that.
He didn't.
That way, but, he may shed some light on some of these questions, and if, I think he would be the better person to answer that. So.
He's not allowed to committee anymore.
Maybe a little easy, right?
We weren't sure. He wasn't listed as the author or the requester of the presenter or supporter of the section either. So, but he was certainly, certainly hear plenty from him. And anyway, we appreciate the background of it. There's 14,000 Vermonters. Is that what I gathered that were potentially impacted by it? And representative cases?
Has it been a big issue? But Has it been a big issue that's stopping people from getting their licenses? Is there any that you know of?
I don't have data around that to be able to know if it's, I mean, I have qualitative data from Vermonters from these, surveys and listening sessions talking about the challenges of affording transportation. But I don't have specific data that speaks to if it's prevented them from getting a license.
If I was a person that was on one of those two programs, would I contact a person like you to say, hey, I can't afford my driver's license? Would I reach out to somebody like you?
I'm thinking of, I think you would more likely reach out to a local community-based organization versus Dale, the Area Agency on Aging or the Community Action Agency to see if there were options for support.
And you haven't heard anything from them groups? I'm sorry. You haven't heard anything from them groups at all, though, or saying it was a problem?
Not specifically.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
But I appreciate the committee just at least considering it and having this conversation and taking into account, the needs of older Vermonters and Vermonters with disabilities as you're thinking about the bill. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you both very much for joining us. I think I could say at least some of us have learned a whole new area and a whole bunch of areas to question. And Representative Casey, I appreciate that last question very much. If somebody was struggling, I wouldn't necessarily know where to tell them to go.
Right.
So we seem to learn something new, and every day we work on it. So is there anything you'd like to add at the end of either of you?
Anecdotally, I mean, I've been accompanying our commissioner throughout the state on her listening tour, as has Angela on occasion. And one of the things we're hearing over and over and over again is transportation in general is an issue. So generally speaking, and not necessarily related to this bill, it is something that has been brought to our attention wherever we go. With access to public transportation or just getting from one thing to another. And that's been a theme throughout the state.
Keeping vehicles running too is probably an
As
issue.
Angela had mentioned, the expense of keeping the car running, is a concern for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
As they said, we haven't had them in this committee before, so I learned something new and where we're at. That's interesting.
Rebecca, nice to see you.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
I would expect that Josh would probably be in person here at some point, I would guess, right?
expectation. Well, yeah.
Okay,
He's got 5 minutes, right?
yeah, he's got a little bit of time. Great.
We can have a discussion after.
I could report back that the sections that we asked for judiciary, unless I'm sorry, did you have?
No, I was just gonna feed off what we just heard.
We sent, or I gave sections like 31, 32, to pull them up. There's about 5 or 6 that were updates on judiciary that we had all taken as technical, or language updates that have been identified as DMV, new DMV attorney we heard about, and from Damien. And, I'll say that we took about 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 or 6 of these sections, and our committee assistant printed them all off individually, and I gave them all to the chair of judiciary last week. And he came back to me in an email yesterday afternoon and said he had actually had some additional clarifying language to go back and forth. So him and Damien are going back and forth on the definition of conviction and clarity, and then something about additional adjudications to cover younger ages, and there's been a little more expanded definition. So in our recommended pieces about expanding some of the definitions, there's some discussion about making them even more clear or adding to some of the newer languages out there. But they did agree, the judiciary, that they were all of technical nature and that they would still be going back and forth between the attorney. So there's about 4 or 5 different pieces that were technical that Chair Lalonde didn't feel that their committee needed to go through anymore. So when we get to going through all the ones that I had noted that were judiciary and feedback, he brought them all back and said, other than whether or not the conversation or the language changes a little bit, if a definition's been expanded to another definition, they'll include it. But it's all very much lawyer pieces. But he didn't think the judiciary needed to take possession of any of the bill or necessarily even do a drive-through. But Josh has arrived, so your timing is perfect. We're going on to the next sections of the S-123 and Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns. It's not limited to just these sections. If there was a couple of other areas that you wanted to comment on, but I know that sections 6 and 25 were specifically noted, but there might be some other areas that you found that you may or may not want to comment. Welcome to committee, and I think it's back to committee. We're here earlier, much earlier in the session, and so.
Well, thank you, Chair Walker, for inviting us. For the record, Josh Hanford. I'm the Director of Intergovernmental Relations at the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. And I took a look at S-123 last night and the various sections that I think VLCT has some comments on. They'll be brief. I think the good news is we're not objecting to any of the language you have in there. So that should be helpful with you moving forward. On section 6 around the waiver of the EV infrastructure charge for municipal vehicles, we would certainly welcome that. It's getting increasingly challenging to find, the resources in the budget, and could encourage municipalities to look at EVs as part of their fleet. It's a small bit, but every bit helps. I know that on the flip side, the transportation budget is stressing, and any reduction of fee plays out there, which municipalities depend on to support its transportation infrastructure. So certainly support where that is now. On section 25, the diesel fuel, the dyed and the non and the reimbursement, we don't have any problem with this change either, going to 12 months. I tried to inquiry some of our municipalities, didn't get a lot of direct feedback, but I think it's fair to say that municipalities like to close out their budgets year to year and have a new budget. And if you had big sort of refunds out there hanging for multiple years, that would be a nightmare to administer and follow up. So this seems completely reasonable. Listened to Matt Coda's testimony on that, learned a little bit about the dyes as well, and can understand why some of my farmer friends have fuel trucks at their house once in a while now. On the ATVs, a little more interesting. We do have a model ordinance for municipalities to adopt ATV use on their roads, and there's a lot of check marks and places where they can customize it. And right in there's a definition of an ATV that uses the wheelbase that exists now. If this was passed, we would change that ordinance and that model to the new wheel width. Can understand that the safety concerns is bringing this about, customer preference. Also, I did speak with some folks at A&R. Interestingly, the wider wheelbase has less damage on trails from their perspective. I think municipalities are choosing to support ATV use on their roads or their legal trails because there's interest groups and they want to support that. And if some of those trails or roads can't handle the wider ones, then those will be dealt with at each different trailhead, and that we don't have an objection or pushing for this wider. It's just, this is an update with where things are at, and we don't object to it being changed. I will note that, preview, I think you'll be hopefully getting at some point here the transportation bill. The Senate that has a situation around legal trails that some municipalities allow motorized vehicles on, ATVs, and a clarification in the legal trails, they're, municipal public rights of way, to sort of clarify some language in there that's become problematic because of a lawsuit in the town of Tunbridge that sort of is threatening the use of over 500 miles of legal trails that are public rights of way in the state. So I think that the ATV discussion just brings that to mind, that in communities that have a large ATV user group and they found a way to work out the situation and work together, some of those ATVs are allowed to be used on these legal rights of way. And certainly this legal trail case and the fix that's in the Senate transportation bill would be helpful for our members. There's over 98 municipalities that have legal trails on town highway maps that need to have the ability to allow maintenance or do maintenance if they so desire. And this court case may remove that, essentially making the trail sort of use obsolete. And so that'll be coming your way. But that's all I have. Appreciate the time to come in and yeah.
Meant to be fairly quick and straightforward or not. We're trying to, when you come in with a miscellaneous,
Right.
there is a whole number of sections. And one of the things we brainstormed was who should we hear from on a variety of these. So these were the ones that were tagged that affected municipalities. Was that the train we rode on
Yes.
Thursday?
We have to go.
We gotta get back to the train on Thursday. Does anybody have any questions on any of these sections or pieces? I do want to, since you brought it up and it wasn't directly on this piece, but this legal trails issue is something you're likely to hear a lot more about and or potentially be contacted in regards to this. There is this large legal battle, but I believe it has some implications way beyond just that town, but throughout the whole state. And perhaps you might know even more nationally than we know. I would not pretend at this point to be an expert in it. We are going to get a brief from our legal counsel on Thursday or Friday, because there is some piece in the T-bill coming back, but also there's a separate bill that is on down in the Senate they've taken a bunch of testimony on. I have been contacted by some people that are involved in the legal trails piece, and I have told them all that our first step is a committee that 3:30 on Thursday, we're going to get at least I don't know what I would have called it an executive summary, but from our ledge counsel, at least a brief of some sort, so that you at least understand the terms and the origin of the case and how it's potentially impacts our committee and the municipalities. But we're not going to legislate that right now, but we'll get into it a little bit later on, but we need at least a brief to know where we're at. You're obviously following it, and we're going to have to learn how to deal with it. And I want to make sure the members at least start with our ledge counsel's take on the whole thing.
But we'd be happy to come back and talk about it for sure.
That will be, along with others that have contacted me, that'll be after we get at least get the committee up to speed from our legal counsel. Representative Powell?
I was just, the trails, and that includes the class 4 roads, is that?
Well, there's a definition of, legal trail and then class 4 road, class 2, class 3, you can't upgrade a legal trail back to a class 4. And that you'll probably hear that that's one of the possible solutions that towns may be left with if this court case goes the wrong way, that they would have to do that. Otherwise, the sections of legal trail that private landowners surround could decide who gets to use it. And so that's what this is all about.
And there's a good reason why I can't go too far, because your opinion is if it can't go in that wrong way, and
Exactly.
we don't know what the issue overall as a committee yet. We haven't taken anything on it. So obviously we know the Vermont League Cities and Towns opinion is which way or the other, but we
have supported Tunbridge in the court case representing all municipalities in a brief. So that our position is very clear. We're defending the town's interests on behalf of all the municipalities.
And we take it up when we take it up for a committee, or if we have to take it up as a committee, you will certainly be on the witness list. Representative Lau?
Oh, yeah, I was just wondering, is the the law at this point clear about the class 4 status? Did you say that a trail could get upgraded to a class 4?
My understanding is the class 4 status is not in question.
Okay.
It's the legal trail. And I'm sure you'll get the whole brief, but there was a period back 10 or more years ago where the state offered grants to map these ancient roads and decide to either do away with them or establish them as legal trails on the town highway map for the public's use right away. And the existing law defines, the municipality can set that use. It never mentions the word maintenance. And so that's what the lawsuit's about. It's hard to allow a use and not have the right to do some maintenance on it. And the use is not in question in this court case. Some legal trails are walking only, some allow motorized vehicles, some allow bikes, snowmobiles. And so in order to allow those uses, our belief was it was always intended that there was maintenance. It just wasn't a detailed piece of legislation.
I have to be fair to the other people that are reaching out and saying, we're going to get a brief. It's going to start with Ledge Council, and then we're going to get other people's opinions on it. So we're up to speed.
Yeah.
I'm guilty occasionally of not staying entirely on the subject that we had. It does seem like, to go back, sorry to cut that off. As far as the DMV bill goes, my limited experience, probably you could comment more. Usually there's more to involve. There's a little bit more involved that involves municipalities than there is in this particular case, but
I like I said, looked through, didn't see any other parts that we have specific interest on.
I could go way off the subject. We just had what is it, 86 in here the other day, or 68 with a salt bill, and you got plenty of opinions on that too, but that's not what we're doing today either. So,
Exactly.
And we didn't take possession of that bill either. So, Representative Burr?
I just thought I'd announce it for the committee that I'm just staring at this invitation
Yes.
from BLCT
Yes.
for tomorrow.
Yes.
in the Cafeteria.
Thursday.
Well, that would be totally appropriate for you to
Thursday,
share
yeah.
right now.
It says Wednesday,
That's it. I'm sorry. The 30th. 30th. Yes.
If you wanted to make a full announcement of that, that would be totally okay.
Yes. We're having a legislative reception in the cafeteria 4 to 6, just to thank legislators for working in municipal government. Recognize, folks that currently serve in municipal government or have in the past. Just thank you for your work in that role and this role, and generally just have a few of our members there to talk to, and VLCT staff to answer questions. We do offer insurance. We're the main insurer for municipalities, as well as the legal and also data, do job, fill jobs for town managers that leave and so forth. And so just, figured it was time for us to share and be open for folks to stop by and chat with us, and appreciate it if you can, if you have the time. Excellent.
Okay. Thank you very much. I know that was an easy one, clarified a few pieces. Sounds like we may hear from you again a little later in the session after things go through. We will go ahead and adjourn and come back at 3:15.